Hello, I'm Anthony Reese, and we are here to share with you about how God moved us to Plano and got us the house that we live in. We were living in Richardson at the time, and God led us to look for some houses. And kind of how it all got started was when God provided a job for Misty. So she's going to share about that first, and then we'll go in and tell the rest of this testimony.
Hello. I've been working in the Garland area and working at a position, and I moved up to doing some work and dealt a lot with the administration and things. And at that point and within that position, I just believed it was right to be looking at going back into the classroom or just changing. There needed to be a change. And so I began looking to see nothing was really opening up. And then when I ended the school year, nothing had opened, so I was still in the same position. There had been a place that God had put in my heart to look into, and I just never would, because when I thought about it or when I would talk to Anthony about it, it just seemed kind of silly to go that direction due to the fact that it was going to be really far from where we were living. Nothing made sense about it on paper. And over the course of the summer, it just kept being there, and I just kept getting pressed about check into that place. And it became very frustrating to me because my head was saying one thing, and in my heart, I knew how to hear the Lord, and I knew that's what was in my heart, was to check into this place. But because I kept thinking, it just prevented me from doing a lot. And finally one day, I just got really frustrated. And I said, forget it, I'm just going to do it. Let's just see what happens. And so as soon as I did it, within an hour or so, things began to open up. And I think it was within a couple of days, maybe, that I got an interview and everything just progressed. And over the course of this, it was at least a month, maybe a little longer, that had taken me to get to the place for me to take that position. And in fact, after I had interviewed and had taken the job, the comment was made that how long that position had been posted, and that they never could find anybody, and they just kept waiting and waiting. And it was when that time frame was given to me, that was like the time frame that I had been trying to work it out to pursue what was in my heart. So God opened that up, and just in the matter of that happening, then everything began to move very quickly from there.
It took about, it was about a month that not only was that position open, but God was working in her heart and actually bringing her to the place of being in the classroom, having been into another position that wasn't in the classroom, knowing all the work that goes into just being in the classroom right there. God was working on her heart to get her to that place.
And that was part of it, because the position I was in was more of, in a sense where I was, it was more looked at as an administrator role. Like I said, I dealt a lot with the administration. I dealt a lot in the education field, although I was not in a classroom any longer. And really just the thought of going back into the classroom was very scary, because I knew the work that it entailed. And so just getting to that place, and that's what I mean when I look at, my head was thinking, like my head was thinking with the drive, or my head was thinking with what that looked like, or my head was thinking with, oh, but you're going to have all this work now. And I had work to do, but it was just different. I did a lot on my own schedule, and now I was going to be back into a very regimented schedule that was the expectation. So there was a lot I had to work through to get to that place where I was willing to be back in the classroom again.
And they told you that you were one of the last people that were actually interviewed for that position.
Right.
After having been open for a month. And what I appreciated about it was just the love of God that he had, in that he was working all of that out in your heart. And his love that he kept that open and it wasn't this pressure that he pressed on you to get you to get that job. It was just that he was working it out in her heart. And as he worked it out in her heart, finally got to that place to where he applied for it. And, I looked at it from a standpoint of, this is going to be so far for us to drive, and I didn't want her to have to drive that far, because she's been in schools before where we lived before, where she's had to make a drive. And I didn't want her to have to continue to do that. And so she got that position. So the day she got that position, which was going to be, we were going to move. And so the next day, I believe it was, if not that same day, I typed up a letter to the apartment complex where we were living in Richardson and let them know that we need to put in our 60-day notice. They needed 60-day notice. So we put the 60-day notice in. At that time, we didn't know where we were going to live. We didn't know, whether we would be renting or buying or what. We just kind of was like, okay, Lord, what would you like us to do? And we let him lead.
And I will say here that going into that last school year, Anthony did keep saying, well, I expect by the end of the year, we're going to be in a house. And occasionally I would ask him that because it didn't look like it at all. But occasionally I would just say, so you still think we're going to be in a house? And he would say, well, that's what I'm believing. And I would just say, okay, although looking at the situation, it didn't seem like that was going to happen the longer we went through the school year. I mean, I was all on board when you first say it, and we're in the summer and we have over a year before our lease is kind of coming back around. But 6 months would go by and I would ask him, and then 3 more months would come and I'd ask him, and then it was like May, the school year had ended, and I would ask him, and he would just keep saying, that's what I'm believing.
So what we did is we set out to move. We're not sure where we were going to move, but kind of looked at a location that was going to be, where I thought would be right, where we thought would be right. It was going to be somewhere close to her school, or closer, and somewhere near the church, so that way our drive wouldn't be that much. And of course, at this time, I'm still on staff at that time at Water of Life, and Misty's working part-time at Water of Life Church. And so that's where we were at, that way we could, wouldn't have the far drive for the church, but also she wouldn't have that far drive to go to her school. And so there was an area that seemed right. So we started looking, and in the process of looking, just, like I said, I was willing to rent. Paul talked about living in his own hired house. That verse came up at one point, and I was like, okay, well, if we rent, we rent. I'm not real big at renting, but I have. And so we rented our house in Broken Arrow that God provided for 5 years, and that wasn't a problem. So whichever way the Lord directed us, that's what we were willing to do. And so we went and looked at some rent houses, and mainly we just kind of drove by and got information, and we looked online to see if there was any rent houses available in kind of the area that we were looking at, and there were several rent houses. I mean, we came across several rent houses that were available, and some were, more than what we'd want to spend. And so we finally looked at one that we just saw driving down the road. We were driving down the road one day.
Well, and a lot of the rent houses that we saw that we would call on or we'd write the numbers down on, we never could get a hold of people on.
Right.
So nobody would call us back, or the number just didn't work, or there was always something that was not opening up. And then we saw the one particular rent house.
We saw one that was, obviously it was for rent. The grass had grown up around it. There was a rent house sign. There was a lock on the door. You called on that one. We called on that particular house, and they said that, oh, that's been rented out. Somebody lives there right now.
Well, and that was kind of the one we really were like, okay, we think this might be the house we're going to get. And I called on it for, 2 weeks at least, and because they kept saying, no, that's not for rent, and I would say, yes, it is, and we would go back and forth over a course of days, and then they asked to give it some time, so I'd give them time, and then I would call back again, and it just went on and on until finally I think then the person, there were certain restrictions, so then it wasn't going to be possible for us to rent the house.
Right.
But it was just an ongoing process of that one.
Right. And so then in the process of looking for rent houses, like I said, we were walking this out and letting God direct our paths, and in the process of looking at these rent houses, Misty had got an email because prior to even making any of these moves, months before, maybe 6 months before any of this, something like that, 6 months or so, I don't have exact time, but we had actually checked into a program that allowed her as a teacher to apply, and then with the help of that program, they would help provide a realtor or get us in contact with a realtor, and they would help out with some down payment assistance and things like that. And so we had checked into that and just kind of put that back on the side because we just weren't going to go that direction at the time. But when we were looking at these rent houses, and not only that, with that program, it was going to require us to have some money up front, which we didn't have. We didn't have that money up front. We had thought prior to all of this that maybe by the time we get ready to move, we would have that money, and but when the time came to move, we didn't have it. So we went the rent house direction and looking that way so we could get in immediately. But during our process of looking for rent houses, they contacted us and got a hold of Misty, and I said, talk to them, see what they need, see what they ask, see what they can offer. And so really we were sitting in the same position as we were before, as not having any cash on hand or any money to put down on the house, which they were kind of expecting. But I said, tell them everything. Tell them that we don't have the money. Tell them that we would need you guys to pay our down payment. Tell them all, we would need the closing costs, we would need all of that. Let them know that. So she let them know everything, and so they had a new program that they had started for down payment assistance, and they started looking into it, and we went forward with that program because they had something that was available for us that could pay for our down payment and pay for our pay for some of our closing, as far as that's the way it looked like. Was you going to share anything?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right. So that's the way we're proceeding. And so with proceeding with that program, they put us in contact with a real estate agent, a local real estate agent, because that program is actually based in another state. And so they put us in contact with a local real estate agent, and we met with that agent, and they were able to show us some houses on the internet, show us some houses that were available. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, we had contacted them, and I think we saw like 3 or 4 houses, and which we didn't even really care about the 3 or 4 houses when I contacted them, but that was all that they had within the amount that we were looking at. And so we went ahead and just went and looked at them, which when we went and looked at them, it wasn't surprising that we didn't like them because we already knew we didn't before we went. We were just trying to go and see like maybe the pictures weren't like what they thought they were. And so that was like on a Tuesday,
Yeah.
Monday or Tuesday, and then Thursday we had gone to bed, and I was just kind of on my phone looking to see if I saw anything and stuff. And so so before we even gone to sleep, I told Anthony, I said, well, what about this one? And I saw one, and he was interested, and he goes, well, let's call in the morning. So when I called the next morning, they said, well, that one's not even showing up that it's available. And I said, well, it's showing up on my end it's available. And so they just asked that we give them like some time or an hour or something to find out, and then it was available. So we went and looked that Friday. So I found it that Thursday night, and we went and looked that Friday afternoon.
So this was the weekend, 4th of July weekend. So the 4th was on a Tuesday, so if you back up, that was what? Monday would be the 3rd, the 2nd would be Sunday, Saturday's the 1st. So this was the last day in June, last day in June, where they showed us this house, the house that we're in now. So they showed us the house, and we liked it, and just looking at it, but they had some others that they wanted to show us, but.
Well, and when we were leaving, I mean, of course, when we walked in, I mean, I loved it, and Anthony didn't really say anything until we left. And then as he was leaving, I mean, we still had I think we're going to look at something else at some point, but that was, looking at this house was kind of the big deal for that day. And when we left, Anthony said, Misty, I think this is our house. So then that afternoon, after we'd seen it, I think we saw it around 4. When we talked to them later on, there had been 14 more people or couples or whatever, that had gone through after us. So then we were kind of like, oh, well, everybody is seeing this house now that it's coming on the market. And really, we kind of knew this, and the realtors even told us this, but pretty much once you find, in this area and here, once you find a house, within the hour, it's going to be gone pretty much. It goes very fast, not even a day or two, and it's gone. Right.
So they had we had looked at it, and like I said, we after leaving, just believed that this was our house. But we looked at some others because they'd already had some lined up. I think one more. I think.
One more. I think.
Yeah, one more is all we looked at, and we went, and that was on Friday, and we left this house telling them that we wanted to make an offer. Now, of course, our situation as far as money on hand had not changed. We were still just we needed down payment assistance, and we needed a down payment, and we needed money for closing costs. And so we went the next morning. This was Saturday morning before the broadcast.
And I will say, I don't know if it was the Saturday. I think it was Friday when we decided we were going to put an offer, or we wanted to make an offer. And the conversation with one of the realtors said something about, kind of with us making that decision so fast, and wouldn't, finding a house can be such a long process. And I just made the comment, and I said, well, we're pretty quick to get an agreement, and so if we believe that this is the house that we want and we're in agreement, then we don't need to see any other houses. And I said, that's just kind of that's kind of how our marriage works. And I said, so once we get an agreement on something, we're ready to move with it. And so that was kind of what I had said back to them, and then we were immediately in agreement with this.
That's just how God has worked in our lives over the years. And so when we met on that Saturday, we went through the offer sheet. And this was a first for both of us as far as going through any of this process. And so we had the realtor and his assistant was there. And so we went through the offer sheet. He was going through it line by line, just telling us everything that was on there. And we came to some points about how much we would put down as far as earnest money. And we did have some money to put earnest money. And so we put, I don't mind saying, we put $1,500 down. And so for earnest money. And of course, by this time, like Misty had said, they had told us that several other people had looked at the house, and at least 14 had looked at the house. And so our realtor was kind of wanting to, push us in the direction, because of course, this would be a good sell for them as well. But they were kind of wanting to push us in the direction of maybe offering more than what the listing was for. And he said he kind of thought about maybe us bumping it up instead of offering the sale price, maybe offering more than a few $1,000s more than the sale price. And I just kind of laughed, and I said, but we don't have it anymore. Because at that time, like I said, we had went through this program that, since Misty was a teacher, she was allowed to go through, and they had only approved her for a certain amount of money.
Which was not even the amount that this house was.
And so since they approved her for a certain amount of money, there was nothing else we could do not having any other money. And so I said, well, we don't have any more money. This is where we're at. And so we continued through the document, and he got to the place of how much should we ask the seller to contribute towards the closing cost. And he was kind of wanting to go around a couple of thousand. I said, well, listen, as I've said, we don't have any money, so we're going to need more than just a couple of thousand to contribute towards closing costs for us to be able to do this. And so he went ahead and wrote in the $5,000, which would have covered the rest of the cost that we were looking at. And so he asked us at one point, because, like I said, he wanted us to offer more for the house, and plus we actually put in for we wanted the seller to contribute more than what he had initially told us we should. And so with those things there, at some point he stopped everything and he said, okay, I just want to know, if you don't get this house, will you be heartbroken? And I just kind of laughed and just kind of looked at Misty and said, no, we won't be heartbroken. I said, because our hearts are not on this house. And I said, and if God doesn't get us this house, he'll get us a better house. And that's what I told him. And so he said, okay, I just wanted to know. But that's how it was for us. And that's what I appreciated about God in this whole process, because he kept us steady through the whole process. And this isn't the end of it, but he kept us steady through this whole process of moving and everything that took place. And so not only did he keep us steady, our hearts weren't on the house. It wasn't on any house. We just knew that we needed to move and believe that God would provide us a place to live. And, you know, it does say, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all of these things will be added unto you. And that's one of those things, a house. And so, knowing that God would provide us a place to live, our hearts weren't on the house. And we knew that we would be where he wanted us, and we expected it to be good. I mean, we don't expect to live in a box. And so we didn't expect God to provide us a nice place. And so, no, our hearts went on the house, and if it didn't work out there, he'd get us a better house. And that's the way we walked into this. And so he finished up the paperwork, and we left that day, and that was on a Saturday.
Right, and one of the things he said was that he would, with it being 4th of July weekend, he said, I don't know if I can get a hold of him. I don't know. He's probably on a boat somewhere. And he said, I'll just have to, send it in, text him, and see if I make contact at some point. And so, and of course, he said, and I don't know how many other people, they were trying to run like numbers to see how many other people were actually still going through the house.
Right.
To see. So that was Saturday afternoon.
That was Saturday morning, going into Saturday afternoon. And at that point, he was going to wait till Sunday to submit the offer. And so he said he was going to call us back on Sunday around 1 o'clock, which would be after church, and then he would talk to us, about what we were going to do. Because at this time, he wasn't just too confident about our offer, which was okay, didn't bother us, because God knew what he was doing. And so he calls us back on Sunday. I believe it was
Sunday night after church.
No, this was prior.
Oh, okay.
This was prior to that. It was either Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon. I think it was Sunday afternoon after church. Because it's Sunday afternoon, and says, okay, we're going to submit, or he told us, he said, so here's the offer, here's what you have. And I said, yeah, that's what we got. And he said that he would go ahead and start pulling up other houses to be ready to show us on Monday, because he was going to go ahead and submit this offer on that Sunday. And he kind of tried to talk me out of submitting the offer, because I was talking to him on the phone. And he continued to talk, he was like, well, we can show you other houses on Monday. And he said, and maybe let's let's start looking at some that have been on the market for a long time and looked at some that are a lower price point. That way, you know, you can offer them this amount and they're probably going to accept it and everything. But there wasn't anything out there that we believed was right. And so I finally just stopped me and I said, well, we can look at the other houses. That's fine. But what would it hurt? What does it hurt if all we do is submit what we've got? Because this is all we can do right here. This is the amount of money we've been approved for. This is the offer we can make. Does it hurt anything just to submit this offer that we have? He goes, well, no, it doesn't hurt anything. But I said, well, let's just do that then. Let's submit the offer we've got, and let's go from there. So he said, okay, we'll do that. But I'll go ahead and have some houses lined up. But, you know, thank God for God was working this out the whole time. Like I said, he kept us steady. Our hearts went on the house. And so he submitted the offer. And that night, the very same night, Misty got a call.
That night, right after we walked.
After church.
After we got done with the service, and I had walked over to on the west side of the church, just kind of getting my stuff and was going to be going home. I had a phone call, and so I called him back, and the realtor, and he was super excited, and he was like, I can't even believe this. The guy accepted your offer. And I just kind of sat there and I said, that's great, about in that tone. And he was like, well, what do you mean that's great? Don't you have anything else to say? Aren't you excited? And I said, well, I'm excited. I just don't have anything else to say. And he was like, he just kept on about why I was not showing more emotion. And I think I told him, I said, I've just learned to stay as steady as I can and not get emotional because I know things can change. And so for me, I mean, yes, I was excited about the house, and yes, I was like, this is great news, but I also knew God enough to know that I don't know what he was doing from 1 minute to the next. So yes, we have the house, but what does the next day hold? So I appreciate God because I didn't want to get my heart set on this house. And there was so much happening. I mean, I was taking a new job. I was trying to get ready to do that. There were more requirements that like August 2nd, I had to report, you know, and there was so much that needed to be done.
You're going back in the classroom. You don't even have all your teaching
I'd
stuff.
given all my teaching stuff away in 14 when I left. So I had a lot going on in my life that I was doing my best to not get, like it would have made it easier to know, okay, this is done, but just to remain steady and know that, you know what, I don't know what God's doing. The guy says we got the house, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
So as of Sunday night, they had accepted our offer. So then that meant but there was still more of a process that needed to happen.
Right.
We got the house.
We still had the money had to be taken
Right,
care of.
and we didn't have any.
And everything. So anyway, along with him calling her and telling her about that the owner or the previous owner accepted our offer, he talked to us about the fact that neither our real estate agent nor the owner, the previous owner, that they couldn't get a hold of the people that we were getting our mortgage through, which, like I said, was in another state. They couldn't get a hold of them. We hadn't been able to get a hold of them. We were having trouble with them as well as far as getting a hold of them. So our real estate agent talked to us about how the previous owner as well as himself, they were both would have been more comfortable, and although they couldn't tell us what to do, they were more comfortable if we went with somebody local as a mortgage provider.
Well, and knowing that if we signed all the paperwork, we only had so much time to close things.
Right.
And knowing that everybody's having a hard time reaching someone, that could cause problems.
Right. Because we only had a short time to close. Part of our offer was the fact that we wanted to close on July 31st.
Yeah.
And here this was July 3rd.
We're already in July.
Yeah, we're already in July, and we wanted it to be done that quick. And they were kind of like, we can't get a hold of this guy. Can we guarantee we can close by the 31st? And so he talked to us about that. Well, it seemed, it was in my heart that we needed to make we needed to make a change. And I was more comfortable dealing with somebody locally as well. So he told us about a person that he dealt with as far as on other transactions that other people had used, and he was comfortable with, and knew that they could get things done quickly as far as doing the process of getting the mortgage. And so he put us in contact with that guy. And so Misty called him up, told him what the situation was. Now, the deal was part of what she had applied for before with the teacher program that she was working with. They not only paid, they put us in contact with the realtor, and they paid part of our closing cost. And really, that closing cost, I think, was 3%, up to 3% of the sales, and that would go towards our closing cost. And so, with everything that happened, the realtor was really excited the fact that they accepted our offer, and he actually agreed to and put it in writing that he would also, since we were going through that other program, that he would, as his own self, pay up to 3% of the sales price toward our closing cost. Which, have you ever heard a realtor paying part of your closing cost?
Well, and that was one of the things I asked him about, and I was like, well, under this other thing, this, and this, and I said, is that still available for us? And he was like, yeah, I'll do it. And I said, well, how do we know that when we get ready to do this, you're really going to do it? And he said, well, I'll put it in writing if it'll make you feel better. And I said, yes.
So he put it in writing, but it was just God. God had set this all up, and so we ended up, and you'll see all of this, but we ended up making contact with this other mortgage company, somebody that's local, and we made contact with them, and Misty talked to them and told them, okay, here's the deal, this is my, what I make at my job, and then I'm also part-time at the church, and this is my husband's salary, and things like that.
Well, which was a little, my salary was in a transitional mode too, because I was starting a new job.
Right.
So all I had, which made it a little complicated, because all I had to go on, or all they had to go on, was my word that I had as many years of experience that I had, and what that would look like with this school district, because I wasn't going to get paid until September, and this is July.
Right.
And so there's nothing verifying that I really make that amount of money.
Right. Even though you do.
I've quit a job, and I haven't started a new one, although I'm supposed to.
Right. And most people don't understand that teachers still get paid during the summer. But anyway, so she goes through that process, and he said, okay, I'll look at the numbers and I'll tell you what we could do. And so he came back the next day after looking at the numbers and offered a certain percentage rate, and also said that he could pay a certain part of our down payment, but it wasn't going to be the same amount that we were going to be able to get through the other program. The other program was going to pay all of our down payment, and this one was only going to pay a percentage of our down payment. So we talked about it. I believed it was right to go with this other company, and so that's what we did. We went with this other mortgage company because they're local, and well, really because it was God. It was just God that we went with this other company. So that's the way we went. We walked forward in this, and knowing that God directs our paths, and He could change our paths and correct our paths anyway at any time. And so we were walking through this. This was on Monday, I believe, when this got worked out. And so the 4th of July weekend, or 4th of July was going to be on Tuesday, the next day. And so we're moving forward. We knew that now we're going to have to come up with this amount of money. So we need to make sure by the time the 31st comes, we've got this amount of money. God would have to provide that some way. When we weren't sure how, we didn't know how he was going to provide it. We just knew he had to provide it some way. And so, so then 4th of July comes. And so we're not done with all of this testimony because it's a really big part of it. 4th of July comes, and later that evening on that day, Doyle had called me up. And he said, so I talked to him on the phone, and he said that he'd been praying. And he believes that God, it's the will of God that I look for another job. And I said, okay. But then I shared with him about what all God was doing with this house, and which encouraged him a great deal. But he believed it was right for me to look for another job. And he was with me and told me he was with me, and I knew that. But he believed it was right. And I said, okay, I want the will of God as well. And everything. So so we went from now, we went through the process of getting approved for this house based on her income and her income at the church and her to-be income, which was going to be from her new job. And then now I lost my, well, I don't want to say lost my job, but I didn't have a source of income that I could show that I would be getting after a certain date. And so,
and that also meant I was not in the church.
Well, that's with me not being at the church, looking for getting another job. Misty was also going to no longer be at the church as well. And so, so we received that call. And so now I'm like, okay, Lord, what are you doing? But we stayed steady, and that's what I appreciate. And that's what I said earlier that I thank God for, because it was just God that kept us steady through every bit of this. And so I wasn't real sure what I would do as far as work, but I did know I had a teaching certificate in Oklahoma, and I did know, and I had mentioned this, that I was thankful for the position that we were in at the time we were in it, as far as getting this house and everything that we saw God do at the same time that Doyle called me up and said, I think it's the will of God that you go look for another job. I was appreciative of the fact that that's how God did it, because he just showed me everything he did. It's kind of like, the Hebrew children, the Israelites, there was the miracle right there. So he did the miracle so he can do more miracles. He's still doing miracles. I mean, it didn't stop at the first miracle. So I knew that if God was getting his house for us, then he had to provide me a job as well. And so that's the way we walked. So I got on the computer that night. I renewed my Oklahoma certificate. Wasn't sure how that would benefit me if I needed it to get the Texas one. So I went ahead and done that because I knew I could do that real quick. And then I looked at what I needed to do to get my Texas teaching certificate, which I did not have at the time. And that was on Tuesday the 4th. On Thursday, they had a test available that I could take. And on Friday, they had a test available I could take. I had to pass both of those tests in order to get my teaching certificate. So I signed up to take those tests, and went Thursday, took one, went Friday, took the other. And so in the meantime, I'm not positive that I'll be teaching. I believed that's what I would be doing, so I pursued that, but I also pursued other jobs. I mean, I applied at a lot of places. And some of them I was doing little work and paid little. Some of them I applied for that paid more. So I applied at many, many places, both teaching and not teaching. I was also drafting, so I applied for companies where I could do some drafting work. So I applied at numerous places. So God's walking us through this, and so we had already been to this place to where God had brought us this far. And so after finding out that news about I would no longer be working at the church, and not only my income would not be coming from the church anymore, but also Misty's income would not be coming from the church anymore for her working part-time. So then I considered, okay, now what do? And this was my heart. But I did not know if I was even going to say anything to our mortgage provider. I didn't know if I was going to say anything. But that night, I couldn't sleep at all. I went to bed and couldn't sleep. I just kept considering it. In fact, our mortgage provider that night, before I went to bed, had sent an email and said, okay, these are the do's and don'ts of getting a mortgage, of buying a new home. These are the do's and don'ts. There are some don'ts on there. Don't quit your job. Don't, things that had to do with that, Do let us know if this happens or whatever. So, I read that. I couldn't sleep that night. It was just God. I mean, God was working this all out. And so, but I got up the next morning and I thought, and I was just considering some things. And I was sitting at the counter at our apartment, and I called Misty over and I said, okay. And I looked at all of the paperwork. I said, okay, we can go up to this particular date and not be in any kind of financial mess if we go up to this particular date. So here's what I wanted to do. First of all, I talked to her about Abraham and Isaac. Abraham offered up Isaac. And here Isaac's, they're walking up there. Isaac's carrying wood, firewood, and he's like, okay, Dad, where's the sacrifice? And he said, the Lord will provide himself the sacrifice. And so what I said to Misty is that if God got us this house, he could get me a job. And if God is getting this house, then he will provide and everything will work out and it'll be okay. So what I want you to do, I told her, I said, what I want you to do, call our mortgage provider up, tell him what happened, tell him what the deal is, and let's let God work it out, see what he does.
And this is where I go back to when the realtor called that Sunday and was like, aren't you excited? Aren't you excited? And I said, I'm glad, I'm excited, I'm happy, but I was not showing any other emotion because this is a perfect example of why. Because who knew all that was going to change?
Right.
So I called the mortgage person, which I appreciate God for him. I called him and I shared with him, and I appreciate that he was always available, like text, whatever, no matter the time of night, always quick to get back with me. And so from that point on, he really became very much a part of anything God did that changed. He immediately knew. And I would have to say, well, so this changed, and it might be something kind of off the charts to anybody that doesn't understand how God works. And so I called him and I said, well, this has changed, and this has also changed for me and everything. And I don't remember if it was at that point or when something else had changed, but at some point, he just said, because we were always talking business stuff, but then at some point he just said, can I ask you a question? And I said, yes. And he asked me something about, something along the lines of just how I was with these changes. Do I get bothered with these changes or something to that effect? And I really just got to share with him some things, and it was, I appreciated it because I'm like, here, I'm talking to my mortgage person, and we're talking about the things of God, and because God is really, doing some things with this house. And so I just talked to him about how I've come to the place where I know God can change things, and it doesn't even have to make sense. It can be when everything seems like it's all working out or things are going so great. It's just whatever God decides. And I talked to him about that's the place that we had come to in our lives. That's the place that I realized, I was at a place where I realized that. And I said, so, with these changes, with this money, and now that it might affect the house, I said, I can't do anything about that. I said, if that's what God decides, that's what he decides. And I said, I just know God works that way. And so he shared some things about his personal life with me. And he made a comment about that he had someone close to him that had shared somewhat of the same things, and he understood to some degree that seems to be what God does and everything. So we really just, aside from the business part, we really just had a great conversation that I was very appreciative of, and I think he took from it that it's not that we're trying to make his life crazy with all these, because he has a job to do and it's dealing with money and lending and trusting people you don't know. But I think he maybe understood that it's not that I'm trying to make your life crazy. God is doing something on our end, and I kind of have to report to you what he's doing, and that's the reason why. So that came out of all that with just the job transitioning and changes being made.
So she called him up when she talked to him. She said, okay, here's the deal. I'm no longer going to be receiving, I no longer have a part-time job. So after this certain day, I won't be receiving this income. And then my husband will no longer be, at this point, will not be working after the certain date. And so he's going to be looking for a new job. And so he goes, and I heard him over the phone. He goes, okay, cool. I'll work that out. I'll see what we got to do. Or I'll crunch the numbers. Yeah, that's what he said. He said, okay, cool. I'll crunch the numbers and I'll get back to you. So he, and we were like, okay, well, all right. Well, we'll go from here. Trust what God's doing and we'll walk on. And so he ended up running the numbers and seeing what was going to take place. And just to show you how God worked all this out, he calls Misty back and gets a hold of her, and he said, okay, well, here's what the deal is. Because everything, the whole mortgage was based off of Misty's income. And it was based off of the income that she would be getting at her new job. And so since it was being based off of that, now she no longer has her part-time income. And since she no longer had her part-time income, that meant her income was less. And since her income was less, we now qualify to be able to get the full down payment. So what happened with all of that is we didn't have to come up with all that extra money. We actually qualified to get the whole down payment, which meant we weren't going to have to pay anything. We didn't have to pay a down payment. We weren't going to have to pay closing costs, because the seller had already agreed to pay $5,000 toward our selling closing costs, and our realtor already agreed to pay up to 3% of the sale price toward our closing costs. And we had put, like I said, $1,500 in the escrow. And so what God did with all of that, he even though I didn't have a job at the time and we didn't have any money to put towards anything, what God did was he paid for everything. We didn't have to make a down payment at all, and everything was provided for. And so, trusting him to do that and walking through that, we got to this point. Now, we still had to continue to believe, but at no point our hearts weren't on the house. Like we said, we knew that God was working this out. We even, we got to that place to where it was like Abraham offered up Isaac and God provided the sacrifice. Well, we were at that place to where, okay, Lord, you're going to have to work this out. And if you ain't doing it, we don't need it. And you'll end up getting us something better. And we'll be where you want us to be, because that was what's important. But we were still in a place to where I was needing a job. And
I will say this too, like during that whole time, even though, which is crazy, because I feel like if you would have written all this down on paper, it would have been like not made sense at all, like with the whole financial part of it. But we never lacked for anything, nothing.
Right. And I want to say this as well. So after we went through and he crunched the numbers and came back with all the news, all now that was just working through the rest of it until they got to the final numbers. I don't even remember what that's called now. Disclosure statement? I don't know. Anyway, we're not realtor people, but we finally got to the final numbers of what everything was. But I do want to say this. The great God is so gracious, and his character, we've been taught, abundant in goodness and truth, merciful, gracious, long-suffering. And you see that in his servants as well, because it's God in them. It's Jesus in a person. And I just want to say that through that time, that God provided for us, and Doyle paid us, or paid me, continued paying me a salary, even though I wasn't working at the church anymore. And he paid me a salary not only until I found a job, he paid me a salary all the way up to the point that I actually started receiving a check from my teaching position, because teaching doesn't start until September. You don't start getting paid until September, even though you start teaching in August. That's just how it works. But I do appreciate that, and I thank God for it, because I still received income. And so when Doyle called me up and said, okay, this is what I'm going to do, of course, we were quick to let our mortgage guy know.
Which was another change.
Which was another change. This is what's taking place. And he goes, and what was funny is because when we first told him that we were no longer going to be at the church, he said, okay, can I call and verify that you guys will not be working there? I said, oh yeah, sure. So, and which I believe he did. But now we had to call him back and say, listen, Anthony's now going to be receiving this money, and let him know about it. And so he said, well, that's fine, as long as Misty wasn't receiving any more income. And so, because everything, the mortgage was being done on Misty's salary.
And maybe you're going to get to this, but I will say that through all of that, we actually ended up getting money back.
Right. And so, at the very end, when we finally closed on everything, the realtor actually didn't have to give a full 3% of his commission, and or 3% of the sales price. And we actually ended up getting our escrow payment that we paid back. And so that $1,500, that helped provide for some things at the house. We had to buy a refrigerator. The house came with all brand new appliances, brand new granite countertops, new stove, new dishwasher, new microwave. Everything was brand new. It didn't come with a refrigerator, so we were able to, that was part of the money that we could use for a refrigerator. God actually provided some other money.
Well, and that was the thing. I mean, even though we got the $1,500 back, I mean, there were still things that
we had
to pay and take care of. So it wasn't all the money had a place to go. It wasn't just like, here, okay, we have all this money. So one of the things, so we closed on the 31st, and I had to report on August 2nd. So we got moved in partly on the 31st, and August 1st was probably just me getting myself together, because the next day was going to be, real life kind of started as far as being back in the classroom again. And so I had new teacher orientation, and I just appreciate God, because even though we didn't lack and things were being paid for, I mean, still when you know you have a big expense coming up, sometimes you can think about it, and it can, for me still sometimes it can, ruffle me a little bit, and I knew everything that had happened, and it's just like, okay, now where is this money going to come from, because we have to get a refrigerator. And we actually priced them, and what we priced was pretty reasonable. That I felt like that's not too much. I mean, it was a good amount, but I wasn't bothered by that. I was like, that's not too big of an amount. But then turns out it wasn't going to fit. So being an older house,
we had to get a one that was flush with the cabinets, because the deeper models was going to cover the door, the entryway into the kitchen.
So actually that went up quite a bit more money, and so my reasonable amount I felt like I could deal with didn't even matter, because now the price just, jacked up. So I go to my new teacher orientation, and so we're, all sitting there, and our superintendent's kind of giving the welcome back and stuff, and so he says, well, to everybody that's everybody that's returning, we're just happy to have our teachers back, da 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 da. And he said, and we would just like to give you all, $1,000. And just in my heart, I said, and I'm always talking to the Lord, like all the time, in a group of people or wherever. I'm always talking to him. And so we're sitting there, and I have all these people around me. He's up there giving his presentation. And just in my heart, I said, that's okay, Lord. I said, I know I'll get it next year, so I'm not bothered. And no longer than I said that, then he says, but we're so excited to be bringing on all these new teachers that we would like to offer them the same amount. So everybody gets $1,000. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, and asking the people next to me, did he say what I think he said? And everything. And then he said, and on top of that, because we think you do this amazing job, went through all this, he said, we're offering you more money. And so God just provided. It was enough money, exactly, I think maybe short of $100 or so. But it was enough money that was the amount that we needed for that new refrigerator. And so, just abundantly above all that you could think or ask. I certainly wouldn't have ever, I didn't even expect anything. I'm just trying to go and get my head wrapped around being in the classroom. And to walk out of that with God being like, oh, I know you need a refrigerator, just give me some time, I'm on top of it. And then he provided.
The other thing about us switching mortgage companies, that switch, we actually ended up getting, instead of a FHA loan, we ended up with a conventional loan, which was going to be much better for us in the long run. And plus, our percentage interest was a whole percentage point lower, so that's going to save us money in the long run. God had all that worked out. We're about out of time on our video. I can see the light blinking, and so we're going to wrap this up. But the other thing with that, I still had to get a job. God provided me a job, and I got back into teaching 7th and 8th grade math, and I got that job one day, or a couple of days. I signed one day before they actually came back, the teachers came back to school. And so God provided that job for me. We wanted to get this video out earlier than this, but we're now on, teachers get Thanksgiving break. So we thank God. We thank God for having the opportunity to share this with you. And we thank the Lord Jesus for walking us through this and directing our paths. You have anything else you want to say? I think that's it. And so until the next time, God bless you.